lot of fishing in this country is very popular is float fishing. A very enjoyable way of seeing bites and keeping you occupied watching a float in the lake or on a river. A very popular style of float these days is called a waggler. Most popular perhaps style available for fishing in all our slow moving rivers in particular, and any lake. It's a straight float invariably that is in different shapes and sizes, of which I'll be explaining in a minute, but very successful and very effective in its use. Just to show you two for example, we have two straight peacock floats. Peacock's been a very popular material for making floats. It's a very buoyant, non-absorbent material that is very good in water. These particular two have an insert. This is a typical example of insert floats. As I say, they're more sensitive, and the beauty of them is the insert literally is detachable. And this particular company have also manufactured spare inserts. So the beauty of this particular one is that you can then insert the respective size and shape one for the conditions that you encounter in your fishing, fishing lakes and rivers in front of you. So you just get the spare insert, reinsert it into the top of the float. It's all sealed, not waterproof, etc. So there's no taking on water and making the float sink more. And very good variety available. Just enhances, with less floats can be used, and obviously more tips to encounter the conditions you're experiencing at the time. As I say, you're not sure where you're going to be fishing prior to going, so by having the spare inserts and obviously an insert waggler available, you can then vary your approach. As you can see, different colours, different shapes. Some conditions, like open white water as we call it, a black top is far more visible, yet tree-lined banks where they're more shade and leaves and that in the reflection, a yellow one would show up more. And obviously again, red, high-vis, non-varnished red is very visible in most conditions, just in non-shadow situations. Just one final point on insert floats. As I said, they are different thicknesses for different conditions, and it is very noticeable how more effective a very thin insert float can be compared to a thicker one. And depends on the species you're targeting, and obviously a very shy biting fish, whatever species, a crucian carp or a roach, you're going to encounter more sensitivity and more bites by shotting up lightly a very fine insert float. But bigger fish like carp and chub aren't quite so finicky in their feeding patterns, and you could get away with a thicker insert with a slight bit less sensitivity. As well as the insert floats, another popular design is basically a straight non-insert. Again, available in many different materials, but has no insert and is a bit more thicker. A lot of the reason being a thicker float will take more shot, bigger shotting capacity, therefore you've got more control with the float in question. Because sizes of float really are all about control, and the bigger the float, the more weights it will take, and therefore the more control you have over the job it does. So in theory, really, the basic golden rule is the deeper the water, the bigger the float is. This particular float is loaded, therefore shotting capacity is less, but it's a very good system because it helps and enhances casting without tangles. You can see the loaded weight there and the insert where you put your adapter on or put your line through the eye. But the beauty of this is it takes less shot, and obviously what is also good on each shot, if you can read that, it does actually give you a rough idea how much shot or weight that float will take in addition to the loading that's already on it. Okay, one more design that's available, a bit more unusual but very effective in the perfect conditions and the right conditions when you encounter. Called a drift beater. You can see by the shape of it, nice body on it, able to take a bit more shotting capacity, thin stem, probably a bit of glass there, with a bulb on the top, which obviously you can imagine for very windy conditions this will sit in the water absolutely perfect. And the top heavy point tip, highly coloured obviously for visibility, will sit there in the rough water and hold its place and be highly visible and not move. You don't want a waggler moving through the water. Obviously a fish sees a moving bait in a still lake, it will be suspicious. This particular chap is very good, and it will stabilise the bait on the bottom of the lake. It's a lake float, and give ideal presentation. As I say, if it's a lake, you do get movement on a lake through the wind, and if your bait is moving accordingly, it will look suspicious to the fish. But a good pattern like this drift beater is able to stabilise the bait on the bottom and keep it supported well without any movement. Okay, traditional way attaching a waggler float is what we call bottom end only. They have, every float will have an eye on, but a process and way I favour is to use an insert, a quick change adapter. Now that adapter will push on to any straight waggler float. Just push it on gently, push it right up so it's no fear of it coming off. Good grip, you're not likely to use the float in casting off, that's really tight, not going anywhere. And then the benefit of that is, by putting the line through the eye in the normal way, hanging on the line on your rod like that, if you were in a position and wanted to change the float, normally if you were just on the eye, get this off, see how well they stick. If you had the line through that eye in particular, you'd have to break the line down, take the shot off. But with the adapter, you can appreciate that it's still on the line, and all you need to do is just adjust your shotting pattern. That's on your main reel line, without having to actually detach the line and break it down. Now, as I said, with the loaded float, with the quick change adapter on it, the shotting capacity is a lot less. So the advised way of attaching it to the line to still ensure movement is with a float stop, or companies also call it a gripper stop. Now this is a sort of rubber grommet that will attach onto your main line, and you can then lock the float with the stop either side. Still gives you freedom of movement, but it will hold the float in place as shot would. But as I said, you need less shot, therefore you might not have the shotting capacity, it's a bit less shotting capacity with the gripper stop. Right, you've got to think about this before you actually set up, because if you're locking the float with gripper stops, you actually have to put one on first before the float goes on. And because these are such a tight fit, you have to transfer them line to line. Very easy, quick operation, but very effective, very easy to do. So first thing, before we put the float on, we'll slide the line through, if you can see that, and then actually under tension you transfer, make sure you've got plenty of line, which I didn't have there, give yourself plenty of line, and then under tension you transfer the float stop off the bit of wire or line onto your own reel line, come up the double bit onto the single bit, and now you're on your main reel line. That's above the float. That's sliding up and down the line, and obviously now we'll stop at that first float stop as required. You want to fix it onto the line, and then just quickly, same operation on the bit of wire. You've got to leave it on the wire, you can't take them off because they will just close up and you won't be able to use them. So you just literally, again, same process, just to show you again, put the line through the wire, pull off, if you can see, pull off a single gripper stop onto your main line, and there she is, one above, one below. You can then slide them up to any position you like, but that is now locking the float without any extra additional weight that, you know, flop shots that you don't want. Okay, now we've got both stops on the line. You'll need to be able to move them. Slide that up to the required setting. Now you can see it's locking the float, and obviously in a minute you'll be plumbing up and finding the depth, and these will easily move up and down the line quite easily to enable you to adjust your depth. Okay, when you are shotting up the float, a big variety of sizes of weights are very important. As you can see there, you buy different dispensers with different selections available, and it gives you large ones for the base of the float and smaller ones that you can put down the line to take the bait down to the fish. Right, with an unloaded float you will need more shot. So in the same way, the line will go through the adapter, and you're invariably required to put large shot on. Again, the same way as we've used the float stops, but you're pinching on large weights, if you can see that, one either side of the float and the adapter. Pinch them on nice and hard, so again they act as a locking but float capacity shotting as well. Again, can be moved quite easily, just tight enough to hold in place, not damage the line, but moved. And obviously that will then make the float sit up in the water in the correct manner. Also very, very important to get the bigger weights underneath the float. Most important that, because that will sort of fly like a dart. But when you've got the weights there, it will fly out without any tangles. And as I said, in comparison to a dart where the loading is in one area, that will act the same way. Any heavy weights down the line will cause it to roll and tangle and create problems with the hook fouling the line. Once you've got the loading, main shot loading underneath, directly under the float, you then need to add smaller weights to take the bait down to the fish. You've got to have some form of weight down the line. It gives you control. You can read what's happening under the water by these, what we call telltale shot, but they have to be a lot smaller to save tangles. So again, in the same way like we did the larger bulk weights, we'll just get a much smaller weight. Again, pinch it, finger pressure onto the line, more than enough, and that you tend to put these on several inches apart, nicknamed shirt button style. And what happens is, as you pinch them on a few inches apart, a bit wider than that normally, again they can be moved, but as they drop through the water they will show up the different stages of the float dropping on that insert. But basically what I'm trying to say is reading what's happening under the water. As they drop, that insert will drop with it, and literally you can tell by different stages each shot drops what's happening and how the bait's reacting, and if the fish are taking it or not taking it on it as it falls down. Okay, as I said, we've covered the shotting pattern on the float. Just to quickly recap, the bulk of the weight here on the Wagler to take it mostly down the weight of the float, nearly to the tip, nearly to the insert. And then, as I said, your little ones down the line, shirt button style, will then drop down and your insert will drop and read what's happening under the water. I mean, obviously here at Oldbury Hill Lakes, you know, they're lovely lakes. We do a lot of Wagler fishing, and should you be in the area, you know, please for you to come along and I can show you in more detail when you're actually here in person.